Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gautam Bose. I am from AutoRabbit. We have a panel discussion around enabling DevOps journeys with a maturity model and a value stream framework. I'd like to have this in a conversational mode. We have two speakers, panel speakers, to assist me with this conversation and take you along with the journey from their experiences. We have Som Rath from Capital One, and he's going to talk about what they are doing around their DevOps journeys. And then we also have Jacqueline Roberts, who is a very experienced DevOps consultant and has worked with, she'll share her experiences at a very large beverage company and automotive services company based in Atlanta. So with that, I'd like to get started with our discussion today. So the first thing is that obviously DevOps means different things to different people, but it really is not a specific thing, right? It represents the integration of development and operations at multiple levels, right? So there is the culture aspect of how work gets done. There are the process and the workflows that enable the work to get done, and of course the last but not the least is the technology management. So all these three integrate into what we call the DevOps journey. And then from a value perspective, the real value of DevOps as a practice is it will enable you, or it should enable, a faster and better quality of software releases. With that, I think what I would like to start off, Som, with you and say, obviously Capital One is a recognized DevOps leader. We are very privileged and happy to have you as an AutoRabbit customer. And would like to share, your views on, and maybe from your perspective of DevOps journey at Capital One.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Okay. Before we go into DevOps, we have to probably look at why we need it, right? I mean, it's a term which is being used for so many places, and my belief is our business is always trying to react to the market force with a more reliable, more efficient, and a quickly manner. And that's where the DevOps is coming into picture. And the DevOps is a concept, is a journey where technology is actually playing a key role to have the whole DevOps journey successful. So that's where we started with looking at it, how we can have DevOps making the business life easier, going to a market faster and quicker. And for Capital One, it's been a tremendous journey. We started around 5 to 6 months back using AutoRabbit and getting into the DevOps pipeline, and it's been a tremendous journey where we are using it to streamline our development process. We are using it to manage our code in an efficient way, deploying things very quickly, and most of all, the best thing is our code is always ready for business to go to production anytime. So that's been our biggest goal. And we have been in that place for last 5 months, and our deployment timings and all those things have been reduced by 70 to 80% now. So it's a journey. It's not going to be a sprint where somebody will say, okay, I have a month, I can just get it done, and we are done. It's going to get enhanced every time, and we'll see how DX comes into the play when we have all this pipeline. But it's a journey, and everybody has to realize that you have those many steps, you have to take those and make a huge CI/CD pipeline which will solve your business needs and your tech needs. I'll get some more insight when we get into the details of the core pillars and all. Right now I'll just see, we'll go ahead.
And Jacqueline, maybe from your perspective, what you have seen at large enterprises and also working with smaller companies, what do you see, how do you see DevOps being a key competitive sort of capability?
Yes, so DevOps, from my perspective, as a matter of practice, is necessary and key to any large enterprise, especially from a Salesforce implementation and Salesforce management, because it allows you to not only understand the capabilities of your resources, but also the capabilities of the tools that you employ. And you, just like Som just stated, it is a journey. And it hurts at first, just like agile transformation. But you start to see that curve where you're seeing a more efficient deployments, you're understanding your test automation capabilities, you're starting to really understand security and compliance checks. And all of those items are part of the DevOps journey.
Okay, excellent. So with that, let's talk a little bit more sort of details of what are the core pillars that will enable you to get started and go through this journey. First thing I feel we really need to have is, in addition to the business support, to have a governance model in place. So how do you make sure that your dev and ops teams and project management teams, they all play together well? And one of the exciting things I thought yesterday's keynote and when announced around the my Trailhead is it could be a good platform to sort of implement your governance policies rather than taking the previous approach of creating centers of excellence, which is mostly IT driven and very prescriptive, to a more of a centers for enablement. So you basically enabling the business users and the business teams to adopt the DevOps practices. And it's at the end of the day, as Jacqueline is saying, it is change. It's changing the way you work. So I think my Trailhead is a good approach, or could be a good platform for you to explore how everybody is on the same page or gets their capabilities. But the key idea is it's good to have some sort of a governance when you start this journey. And again, in terms of governance, any thoughts from Capital One or
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of the governance, if you look at, right, so you have so many tools and all those things available in market. But the first thing is how you define your strategy. What you're trying to achieve. It's probably sometimes it may be a cool factor saying that we are in DevOps, but what it is doing for you from your dev and ops perspective, plus how it is solving your business. So you can do it in any or many tools that you have available, but your strategy needs to be there. And with this new My Trailhead stuff and all, it's really going to help everybody to have that strategy defined.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, the governance is basically either your foundation or your roof to the house that you build. Because you need to be able to define, and you need to clearly define your governance practices, what constitutes best practice from your development teams, as well as the roadmap needs to be incorporated from your operations team.
Yeah. So the next pillar is going to be, the user stories or the business requirements that is essentially what your software developers are building. Whether it is the new customer experiences to offer or to do some transactional systems, you really need some way of doing it in an agile way. Jacqueline, can you talk about a little bit about the role of user stories and how it needs to be connected with the code that you're developing?
So effectively, user stories should support your actual roadmap. And your user stories should roll up to features and your epics that support a strategic roadmap initiative. And so therefore, when you're executing from a tactical perspective, whether it be version 1 or it's Jira or it's Rally, those support and move your actual strategic roadmap that you're executing on. So having those processes defined as part of governance and implementing those tools help to support your business objectives.
Som, as you know that in the DX world, in the emerging direction that Salesforce is going, where the individual user stories have to be provisioned to the developers, and I think DX gives us that another opportunity to connect and the code with the user requirement.
Yeah, absolutely, and there will be a huge circle that you're going to come around. If you talk about Jira, you can start your user stories with Jira and do the development, and with the automation you can come back and actually log the results in Jira. So that will be the matured pipeline for you, where you start with the process and end in Jira, and everything is in one place.
Excellent. Now, obviously, in order for us to do all this in having multiple developers developing code at different versions of the application, you need a very strong version control system. All right. So what we are really feel is that this is the foundation or the bedrock of a good DevOps practice, is to really use your version control to the fullest extent. Jacqueline, if you can share your thoughts there.
Well, the slide says it all, that your version control is your single source of truth for code changes. That's metadata or configuration changes. Your version control should be your single source of truth, because it allows you to subsequently, if you have issues where you need to merge the code, it allows you to be able to go back to your branch where you've checked in the code and validate that that is your single source of truth. In your experience?
Yeah, so this is a big piece. So we are using Git, and we are using the AutoRabbit Easy Commit feature. So AutoRabbit Easy Commit is pretty handy for us, which is actually reducing the complexity and finding the duplicates or finding any overhead and all those things and merging them. So everybody will probably be using Git, but how you find out the different branches, the problems in the branches, when do you merge, somebody overlapping your code, that is a very challenging stuff if you are doing it in Salesforce, because it creates all the XMLs and you have to find out where the differences are, how to find those things. So that's the tricky part in my mind in our Salesforce journey, that how do you make sure your version control branches are pretty good, and how do you make sure that those branches are going to the master branch in a right way.
Yeah.
So everybody needs to have a good look at it and spend some good amount of time to define your branching strategy.
And this is where I think I would encourage some of you who have not seen the AutoRabbit tool, we give a graphical user interface to Git, right? In terms of when you do the merges, we have a couple of booths in our the DevForest areas as well as the Expo. But it's important for you to be able to merge your code efficiently, and we need to do that. So the next thing is the test environment and the test automation. So Som, you can talk a little bit about how critical a test automation is in this overall.
Yeah. So for us, it was again a little different in terms of how people do. People usually have their CI/CD pipeline and have the test automation in that. So we use our own framework that we have built in Capital One. It's built in Ruby Cucumber framework. So that's our test automation framework that stays in a Capital One network. And in this whole CI/CD pipeline, we actually come out of AutoRabbit and connect our pipeline to the test automation framework that is there in Capital One. So it's if you look at it from the architectural perspective, yes, it's a full CI/CD pipeline which have all the components. But if you look at just from the view of if you have it in AutoRabbit or in some other tool, there are like two different pieces that are getting connected, and that's how the whole automation is getting done.
Now, the code reviews and the code quality, as much as the velocity is important to have quick releases, you have to make sure that your code is of a certain quality. So, Jacqueline, maybe can you share your thoughts on what is some of the best practices around compliance and code reviews?
So the code reviews and compliance checks, ideally the development or delivery teams are incorporating in their builds from dev to their system integration environments, because they want to have that feedback loop immediately before you're deploying to QA or before you're deploying to UAT. You actually receive your feedback loop in your build for CI/CD immediately. Whether you're utilizing the full suite of AutoRabbit or you're checking your code in outside of AutoRabbit, there are a number of tools that will give you immediate feedback. But because AutoRabbit incorporates and integrates all of those tools, you can have that feedback immediately.
And then, of course, in order to tie everything together, you really need some sort of a branching strategy and how to control the pipeline. One of the things that we'll see in the process flows can get very complicated. Even with, I would say, medium-sized customers, what we have seen is you tend to have lots and lots of development orgs, and you have to make sure that in order to achieve true automation, you have a branching strategy that supports the release velocity that you are seeking. So this is again a modeling part of the story, but it's important to have a good branching strategy in place. The last but not the least is, like as they say in Gene Kim's way, 3 ways of DevOps, having a good amplification feedback loop, having a dashboard is very, very important to be able to measure how well you are doing, how well. And in that context, obviously, Capital One is a leader. You have open sourced your Hygieia DevOps dashboard. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Hygieia is a homegrown Capital One tool, and it's been open source been quite some time, and there are a lot of companies who are using it. And Hygieia is a tool that's mostly used for your cloud-based infrastructure or your DevOps or CI/CD pipeline to see real time where you are, how many resources you're using, what you're using, what is the efficiency in those kind of things. So right now our Salesforce CI/CD pipeline is not connected to Hygieia, but that's our future where we can actually connect and build the whole dashboard. And it doesn't just need to be Hygieia. You can go to any tool, but the end of the day, you need to have visibility to what you're doing, how you're doing, how efficiently you're managing your code and all those things. So you need to have that through something.
So overall, how do you, obviously, this is as Som and Jacqueline pointed out, is that it's a journey. So how do you, and most of the time we feel that customers, enterprise customers who are fairly, into this journey, they have some sort of a roadmap for this, but some companies who are just getting started, it can be overwhelming. So at AutoRabbit, we've come up with a value stream framework or a structure around which you can get started on your journey. We use the maturity model concept, which takes you from a beginner or a explorer type of state to a expert, or what some people are calling a disruptor. You have to have, based on your own particular business requirements, have some sort of a prioritization as to which value stream is important for you, and have some sort of a roadmap for your journey. Again, for those of you are more interested, please feel free to stop and have a conversation around this after this session as well. And last but not the least, just to give you a quick overview, we have this platform for continuous delivery. If you want to see a demo, please visit our booth here in DevForest and also in the expo area. But the whole idea is we want to be able to support the end-to-end sort of a loop, closed loop between your developers and so on. So with that, we have some sort of call to action or some suggestions about, so would you want to sum it up anyway, Som, in terms of how does one get started?
My biggest suggestion is you take it up as a journey. Don't sprint it through. It's a marathon. Go slow, but think through it and prepare yourself before you start the journey. A lot of people probably jump into it, and then you feel that, oh, I'm not getting the value of it because I was thinking of finishing it in a month. So it's not a journey, and it's not a sprint. It's going to be a journey. You have to take time, and you should have your business partner also accept that this is a journey which is going to take some time.
I love the marathon analogy, and I think that gives us a good. And any closing thoughts, Jacqueline?
I think he captured it succinctly, that it is a journey, and take your time and plan accordingly. You need to plan it as part of one of your strategic initiatives.
With that, we are out of time, and thank you very much for joining us today. And please feel free to talk to us at the end of the presentation. So,
Thank you.